Jonathan Pollard, hello, how are you?
Fine, thank you very much.
You know, you're one of my many heroes. I even did a whole podcast about you myself, like 40 minutes. The whole story with everything that you've been through. I'm not sure if it was 100% correct, but I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you. And let's start with the politics stuff. 48 hours ago, you announced that you're running for the Knesset. And anything changed?
Yes, I decided yesterday, for several reasons, to withdraw. I had heard that it was going to be a, quote, bumpy ride, and those predictions were correct. I got overwhelmed with death threats.
Death threats?
Yeah.
By who?
The major problems were from the left.
From the left?
From the left.
Why do they care?
Because of my position on the hostage crisis. It was a problem over the past couple of years because, again, of my position that the hostages should be brought out by strength, not by concession. And there are people on the left who made a career out of using the hostage crisis as a means of undermining the coalition government. So when I came out with my positions, and I reiterated them recently, this lit a fire
Really?
under these guys, and it was pretty bad. On the right, the problem comes from, if you'll excuse me, the Bibistas.
Really?
And they feel that I have not shown enough hakarat hatov for the president, or for the prime minister, for securing my release. And I try to tell people that I have expressed thanks to Bibi each and every time that I've been asked. However, it doesn't mean that I hold my view of the current situation, the matzav, hostage to some presumed lifelong obligation to thank Bibi for having secured my release. There were other people who figured perhaps more prominently in my release, and this included, none the least of which was HaKodesh Baruch Hu,
of course,
my late wife Esther, Alea Shalom, Ron Dermer, Miri,
Ron Dermer, really?
Yes, very much. Miri and Sheldon Adelson and Rabbi Pesach Lerner. There were a host of people that played very important roles in securing my release at the end of the Trump administration, and they seem to have just been forgotten. So, yes, I owe thanks. I am thankful to the Prime Minister for allowing Ron to work for my release. However, when October 7th came, everything ended for me as far as my thanks was concerned. Up until October 7th, I labored under the misperception that my abandonment and betrayal were exceptions to the rule. You know, okay. I still believe that we never left a soldier behind. Well, on October 7th, what I saw was that the government, the army, and the intelligence community had betrayed and abandoned the entire country. And It was at that point that I just said, I can't remain silent anymore.
Two questions about it. One, so they are scared that you will have a lot of, not sure how to say it in English, a lot of voters, that you will bother the Likud in the elections?
The left actually wanted me to keep running. They wanted it in order to pull votes from Bibi, but they didn't understand a fundamental fact about me. I'm a conservative. I'm a nationalist.
Yeah, I think that's understood.
Yeah, and any votes, any mandates that I was lucky enough to win with ARUTZ SHEVA, the party that I was running under, would have gone into a conservative coalition. But the left sometimes, you know, they don't understand things. They have their own conceptia, if you will, or misconceptia of political reality. And the right, mostly Bibi's partisans, felt that I was undermining him by pulling votes away from him. But anybody who has listened to me or has read what I've written since October 7th knows that I am not a Bibista. I consider Bibi part of the problem. And I want a reconfiguration, if you will, of the right wing. The Likud right now is not a right-wing party. I've asked people if they could please explain to me what the political philosophy of the Likud is. And I get these blank stares, and they say, well, it's Bibi.
Isn't it just because it's a very big party, and the bigger the party is, that she can have a specific
It's the big
policy?
tent. It's the big tent.
It's like the Democrats and the Republicans,
Yeah,
they
the
have
problem-
to include everything.
The problem is with the Likud. They don't really act on anything. From a conservative standpoint, there are many things I can point to where Bibi pulled back. This includes the application of civil law to Jewish settlers, Jewish citizens, Israeli citizens in Yehuda and Shomron, to any number of other things with regard to sovereignty, even a limited application of sovereignty in the territories. I mean, I could just go through lists and lists. Things like abrogating Oslo, saying the whole thing is a joke. It's been a murderous joke and we've got to stop it. Again, I can spend literally hours where many members of the Likud, true to a conservative philosophy, wanted certain legislations passed.
Okay.
And Bibi just stepped in and said no.
But isn't it one of those things that Ariel Sharon once said, דברים שרואים מפה לא רואים משם, things that you can't see from here, you see another way while you get to be the prime minister. You have those limitations, the Americans, the Europeans.
This is a very important point that you just raised, and it's one that is not raised enough.
Donald Trump, he says no. You say, I want to. He says no.
Two of the most important principles that I've been trying to push are, on the one hand, the need for military self-sufficiency.
Okay.
Let's deal with it on a principle basis. And we now know, I'm sorry we had to be hit over the head by this, but in light of our experiences during the Biden administration, that military self-sufficiency, to the largest extent that we can accomplish that, is in our strategic national interest. On the other side of that coin is what I call strategic independence. And that means developing a concept of Yisrael Rishonah, an Israel first doctrine. And I'll give you an example of that. You remember that during the Biden administration, we were just about to go into Lebanon because Hezbollah finally came in and was bombarding us.
The 7th day or the 10th day?
Yeah,
something
it was like almost 2 weeks after the war in Gaza started. Okay. And the Biden administration made it very clear that we were only to go in partially, and even then for a very short period of time. And most of us understood that this was an opportunity that we had to finish off Hezbollah. Okay. And we blinked, as they say. We blinked. So when I discussed this matter with certain people in the Prime Minister's office and in the Kirya, I reminded them of something. That during the 73 war, when Kissinger stopped the aerial supply of Israel, our government, and I have to say this for legal reasons, allegedly, parked an aircraft at Tel Nof Air Base, an A-4 Skyhawk, with 2 unconventional weapons under its wings. And we told the Americans to fly their satellites over at a certain time and to take a look at that airplane. And the next day, the airlift commenced.
Yeah, but I'm not sure you can do the same with Donald Trump. I think he will overreact.
No, we're dealing with Biden.
Okay.
With Biden. And so I was asked, the people every time I mentioned this story, looked at me in horror. And they said, you would do this again.
Nuclear war.
And I said, I don't view nuclear weapons as something that is that bad.
Well,
It's
no,
because
how
of
come-
my
how not?
training. I was trained basically as a Soviet General Staff Officer. I wasn't trained as an American staff officer.
What does it
So-
mean?
It means that my understanding of weapon systems and how they're to be used is fundamentally different from a Western view of how these weapons are to be
What's
used.
the difference with
The difference is, for the United States and the West, nuclear weapons at any level, tactical, strategic, EMPs, whatever, are viewed as something that should only be used as a last resort. And even then, very carefully, on an escalation ladder, as they say. With me, I don't care if you start throwing nukes immediately, responsibly, but immediately. And a case that I've been pushing is the use of an electromagnetic pulse weapon or weapons against Iran. Why are we waiting to get hit?
Why
right
are we
now?
waiting to get hit?
We're waiting to get hit because we are an American auxiliary. We are
Well,
not an
American,
independent. We
one
are
of the American states.
Basically, that's why I kind of derisively refer to Bibi as Governor Bibi.
Something like that.
Because
not
pe-
Bibi himself. Anyone in his
No,
position.
anyone in that position. It's
Yeah.
not Bibi personally. It's anybody who's in the Rosh HaMemshala's position. And this is why I've been talking about the need for an Yisrael Rishonah principle to act
But
on.
Jordan, it was always like that. It's that thing changed in the last 20 years or something like that.
It really changed after 1967.
Okay. We started to be dependent only on the American
on
weapons.
on the American weapons. We were shocked at what happened when France embargoed, when de Gaulle embargoed the Mirage 4. I think there were 50 of them, something like that. And suddenly we found ourselves dependent. I say criminally dependent on the United States. And I remember I went to Israel Aircraft Industries for a meeting 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. And I walked by this mock-up of an airplane and I stopped. And I looked at it. And it was the Lavi.
Lavi.
And one of the gentlemen that was escorting me to the meeting said, "What are you thinking?" Because I was just standing there looking at it. And I said, that was maybe the last opportunity we had
To be independent.
to be independent.
Yeah, of course.
And there it is as a museum piece. Well, I don't view our independence as something that's contextual, that is dependent, if you will, on anyone's goodwill. You know, they gave us an inch, so we took a quarter of an inch. I'm not looking for that. I'm not looking for favors. And especially when you're dealing with a madman, and yes, I just said it, a madman like Donald Trump,
For the good or for the
or
worst.
for the good or for the
Yeah,
worst,
of course.
he does not respect weakness. This
Yeah,
is why.
that's true.
Who are his heroes? Erdogan.
Yeah.
God forbid. Erdogan. Putin.
Yeah.
Okay? Kim Jong-il.
presidents of North Korea,
North
China,
Korea. I
yeah.
mean, these are his heroes.
Yeah, yeah.
So you've got to be a
He
tough
sees
guy
himself in them.
because he's jealous that he can't act in some way similar to them.
Yes.
So when Bibi is accommodating, slavishly accommodating to him, I call Bibi a doormat for him. Basically, you have no respect from a guy like Trump.
But does he have a choice?
Yes, he has a
He
choice.
has a choice?
Can
Can he tell them, Donald,
I found out through my experiences in 30 years in prison that an individual always has a choice. The consequences may not be to his liking.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay?
We're afraid of the consequences.
Okay? But sometimes you have to do what's right, even if the consequences of acting on your own self-interest may seem at the moment to be negative. You still have to act independently. Look, let me give you an example of where something like that works. At the end of the 12-day war,
Okay.
as you remember,
Donald said to turn off the planes.
correct, but he used an epithet. He used profanity.
Fucking planes, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And at that moment, Bibi should have said, I'm sorry, I didn't get your communication. I didn't
We
hear.
didn't get it on time. It was too late.
It was too
Something
late,
like
and the
that.
planes were en route, and they dropped their bombs, and
There was
okay,
no communication.
correct.
It wasn't working.
Yeah, it
there
broke
was a
down.
storm.
And let the planes come back. But instead, he turned the planes around. And that was I consider it a criminal mistake. Not criminal in the legal sense, but in the sense of morally. It was a criminal mistake. We lost 4 wonderful people in Beersheba because of that. And for me, even losing 1 person is one too many.
Jordan, is it possible? We probably share the same views on a lot of things, but is it possible that Bibi in his position as prime minister sees a lot of things that we just don't get them? For example, his relationship with Donald Trump. Maybe he's certain 100% the moment he tells him no, he will stop all the weapons, stop all the relationships, abandon us in the United Nations or something like that.
Alavai.
Alavai what? That he will abandon us?
Before the last election in the United States, presidential election, I was asked who I was in favor of. Okay. And I said, of course, Donald Trump. I mean, okay. But I said, Aval, I wouldn't be unhappy if Kamala Harris had been elected.
Really?
Or was to be elected. And they looked at me like I was Mishuga, and they said, why on earth would you be okay with that? I said, if it works out that way, I would be okay with that because her administration would force us to become independent. We wouldn't have a choice. Yeah, we would have to, as I like to say, put on our big boy pants and start acting like we were a nuclear power.
But do you think it's possible that will be totally
totally self? No country is an autarky. No country is completely independent. Even North Korea, as an example, is absolutely dependent upon the Chinese and the Russians for military support. Look, I have laid out over the past 3 years 3 or 4 strategic projects that we absolutely, positively must industrialize if we are to have, on the one hand, a deterrent, and on the other hand, a war-winning military machine from day one. First strike.
Okay.
And these are not nuclear, okay? Let me just get that out. And when I've written about them, in fact, in Israel National News. And when I talk about them with military industrialists at the highest of levels here, or people from the Kiryah who are in the weapons procurement and R&D departments, they look at me and they say the same thing. The Americans won't let. And my answer to
they won't allow us to
they
develop
won't
all the
allow
weapons.
us to
Yes,
do
of
that.
course.
And my response to that is it possible to develop these systems in collaboration with other countries?
Probably, yes.
Yes, and they admit, yes. But it's this look of fear on their face that just communicates to me the fact that they don't see us as independent. You know what it reminds me of?
Not.
The spies,
We're
the
not
Meraglim, who said we were as grasshoppers, in the eyes of the giants. Well, this is the same look I saw in their face. And I said, but look, I came with an incredible amount of money from an overseas investment company for the production of a certain weapon system here. It was an extraordinary amount of money. And I tried for a year to get this company's attention, and they were scared.
Of course.
Not about me, not about where the money was coming from, but the fact that the Americans would never allow them to develop this system. So, again, as I said, I've done everything publicly. I've written about this in Israel National News extensively. About the 3 or 4 weapon systems we absolutely have to produce, and
Which ones?
One of them is what we call a hypersonic glide vehicle, an HGV, and the Chinese have an interesting cheap version. It's $100,000. That's all it is. We need maneuvering reentry vehicles on ballistic missiles, and we need a collaborative combat aircraft, a CCA of a design that I came up with from World War II. It's a German design, and a strategic bomber, unmanned strategic bomber.
You mean like B-52, but with
like
no pilot?
like a B2
B2 or B-52.
B1, yeah. And everybody keeps telling me we can't build this, and we can. We actually can. So these are just some of the things that the programs that I've talked about, practically speaking. And everybody admits, yes, they would be critical for us, either to prevent or to win the next war. But nobody wants to take the risk. Look, the procurement process in the Kyria has to be completely reformed. Okay, I've talked to a lot of technical people in this country from startups who don't want to take any money from the Kyria, none, because the red tape and just the bureaucratic hassle is too much.
It's too much.
So they get their own private money, and Baruch Hashem, they come out with wonderful equipment. Okay, here's a problem with the drones, that suddenly it's a problem. Well, it shouldn't have been suddenly.
Yes,
when
of
I,
course.
it's
like
been
6,
around
7
for
years or
correct,
something like that.
correct. And when Bibi, and here the Bibistas are going to be, sweating bullets when I say this and gnashing their teeth. Okay, Bibi, today comes out with a statement.
Yeah, I told them 6 years ago.
Well, excuse me. It's like a man telling a woman, I love you, and then waiting 10 years before saying, I'd like to marry you. It doesn't work that way. Yes, as Rosh HaMemshalah, if he knew that there was a problem, then he had the ability, he had the legal ability, go and do something.
Yeah,
go and do something. He didn't do that. And it's the same.
Give me a solution in 2 months here in my office.
Correct. Look, everybody knows, or should know, about the drone problem down in the Negev.
Yes, of course, with the smuggling.
With the smuggling and everything else. And when I wrote a possible solution, which I published in Israel National News, when I wrote a possible solution, all the technical guys in the Army that I shared this with said we could do this tomorrow.
It can't be that difficult to handle it.
It isn't. The men that we have lost, the Chayalim that we have lost in Lebanon because of the drones, the blood is on the hands of the Kyria and the Rosh HaMemshalah, and that means Bennett as well, not just Bibi. There are solutions right now that we could adopt, not just the nets that they're using to put over.
Ridiculous.
It's ridiculous because all the Hezbollah has to do is put a proximity fuse on these drones so that the minute they stop, they go off. And then what happens? Okay, so this is window dressing, as we say. This looks like they're doing something, okay? There are very practical things that we could do that would save lives, and we aren't doing them.
So why aren't we doing it?
Because there's a bureaucratic mindset right now in the Kyria. As I said, the procurement office and Mofat, the division that's involved with developing things, they don't understand we're at war. They think, like the Americans think, actually, that we have all the time in the world to figure something out. So we have a procedure that has to go step by step.
Trump just announced another 45 minutes ceasefire, another 45 days ceasefire. How the Americans sees it? They know that they are still fighting on the border. They see all the drones, the missiles. We attack, they attack. How can they consider it a ceasefire? Am I missing something here?
Before the Second World War started in the West, this is during the winter of 1940, there was what was...
Poland, right?
Well, Poland was September 39. That lasted a few weeks. But when war was turning to the West, there was what was called not a blitzkrieg, but a sitzkrieg, a sitting war by the West. And they sat.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
The Germans performed what's called blitzkrieg against Poland, and the West practiced what was called sitzkrieg, sitting. Yeah, they just didn't do anything. They just sat there. Well, in many respects, this is worse what Trump is doing. It's worse by saying we're going to have 45 more days or 10 more days or 10 hours or whatever. What happens at a minimum is that you're telling the Iranians we're scared. I mean, that's how they see it.
Yes, of course.
And this is a problem with the Americans for the past 47 years, ever since the Iranian Revolution, when Khomeini came into power. They really haven't appreciated the nature of the threat in Tehran. They think that they're just, like thugs, and we can deal with thugs. We can have a deal, okay? Every administration has felt that way.
But they have smart people. They have CIA. They have all the spies in the world, satellites. I don't know.
Just remember,
NSA, they
this
don't really understand.
No, they
How
don't.
How can they not understand
They don't.
that the Tehranians don't see the world the same way they do?
They don't. I know that when I was in the intelligence community and working on terrorist-related problems, I had to explain to people what the nature of jihad was. And I got waved off. We don't want to hear this.
Why not? Why they want to?
Because they didn't believe in it. These are
they
normal.
They don't believe in what?
These are normal guys. They're just using the issue or the topic or the idea of jihad as a cover for what they're doing. And I kept telling people.
Cover for what?
I kept telling them they really believe this stuff. They strap on bombs. They walk into a supermarket and kill 40, 50 people because they think they're going to heaven, paradise with 70 virgins. And I got laughed at.
Really?
Are you serious? This is stupid. What's the real politics involved?
They don't believe it?
No.
So what do they think? That it's a cover for what?
They think that these are just regular people who are using religion in an unusual way. And I tried to tell them at the time, how long ago was this? 40 years ago, that if you think, the North Koreans are crazy, you're wrong.
North Koreans are...
Because they have a very logical and predictable strategic doctrine, which is regime survival. The Iranians don't think that way. They do not think that the IRGC and the mullahs, they do not think this way. These are the 12 Shias.
Yes,
this is their philosophy. And they look at me and say, what has that got to do with anything? So you have to understand that there are a lot of people, thank God, in the American intelligence and military community that do understand the nature of the IRGC, but they're essentially powerless to take a guy, any of the presidents for that matter,
yes, of
and
course,
Trump in particular, who keeps thinking a deal. This is why he says the most idiotic things that you might say in a real estate deal to scare the other guy. But all it does is communicating to the Iranians, as you just said, it's another ceasefire, that this guy is...
He doesn't want to
He doesn't want to fight.
He doesn't want to fight.
When I was in prison, there was a joke that we had that, a guy is being pressured and he has to prove his manhood, right? So he picks a fight
with the
biggest guy right in front of the captain's office, knowing that this fight isn't going to last very long before the captain and his crew all the time. And
really?
It stops.
Wow.
And the coward is dragged off screaming, "Let me fight, let me fight, let me fight." Well, this is crazy, but Trump reminds me of that coward that picks a fight and then tries to scare the other guy with his rhetoric. And I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. All you're communicating is weakness. He doesn't see it that way. I, as I said, was trained by the Soviets, and the Soviet military doctrine was when you go to war, you hammer the enemy until there's nothing left of him.
Yes.
You reduce his cities to dust, you kill his soldiers, and you terrorize his people. And then you declare victory, okay?
It makes sense.
It makes sense. The Americans used to fight that way during the Second World War.
No, but it was too long ago.
But that was too long ago.
It was, 80 years ago.
Yeah, and they've forgotten how to wage decisive war, and unfortunately, we've picked that infection up.
I forgot the name, the guy that Trump sends to all his missions around the world.
Witkoff?
Witkoff. I see him in an interview, and he says something like, the president is very frustrated that the Iranians don't respond the way he wants to, and then they don't surrender. They don't have anyone to explain him how it works? That
No.
they are crazy?
No.
That they are genuinely crazy?
Stephen Witkoff.
It's an example, it's not...
No, you have to be specific in this matter. Both Jared Kushner and Witkoff are not the sharpest pencils in the box.
Okay. In what way?
End of story. They're stupid.
Okay. But
And they
Jared
really,
Kushner
they don't
is
really
considered
know.
a genius
They
in business
don't
or
know.
something like that.
Genius? No.
I don't know.
No. The Qataris saved him from total bankruptcy. And when you involve a guy like Tom Barrack, who is the special representative for Syria, for example.
Yeah, he's an ambassador in Turkey now,
He's
right?
the ambassador
Yeah.
to Turkey. This guy is even more dangerous because he's encouraging al-Jolani, and I continue to call him that, the new head in Damascus, trying to portray him as someone you can work with. You can really work with this guy. Frankly, what Bibi did with the Druze was unbelievably bad. When al-Jolani's Syrian army and the jihadis that he had hired went into Sweda, we knew about this days in advance that they were going to come in and commit
Yes,
genocide.
of course. Everyone
days.
knew.
And I asked at the time. I saw the pictures. I mean, you can get satellite photography from everywhere now. Do you know that there's going to be an invasion and they're going to commit genocide? And yes, everybody I asked said, yes, absolutely. And I said, Aval,
Donald Trump is not allowing it.
did you? That's
Donald
exactly.
Trump likes al-Julani. He's a pretty,
And so,
pretty handsome...
yeah, he's a tough guy. He's a handsome guy. He's somebody we can work with. He's got a hard job. I think that was the hard, right. So hard pass, right. So the issue at that point was we were going to allow someone to commit genocide on our border against allies of ours. And if the Druze community in Israel had not essentially threatened Bibi politically at the time, that genocide would have occurred.
Yeah, they stormed the fence.
They stormed the fence. They did what was necessary. This is why when the Druze decided to start their own party, or certain members of the Druze community decided to start their own party, the Brothers Party, I was actually in favor of that.
I'm not sure they have enough people to...
It's enough to
get
scare.
in.
It's enough to scare.
Yeah.
Because when the Likud depends on them for, let's say, one mandate, or maybe even to make up one mandate or two, it's like with me. You know, how many people was I going to draw off from the Likud? The fact of the matter is we have what we call a pact of blood with the Druze. I consider the Druze blood brothers to us. And so when you look at Sweda or the Bashan or Al-Dara up north, the three governates in southern Syria, we don't think geostrategically. Forget about Jolani. Forget about Donald Trump. I am principally worried, first of all, for the welfare of our Druze brothers across the border, but secondarily, if Jolani and his Islamists actually reoccupy that area,
They will.
we will have the Turks. We will have the Turks right on our border.
We eventually will,
and I'm not so sure that we will have as easy a time with the Turks as we've had with the Iranians. I've been following Turkish military doctrine, and
the strongest army in the Middle East.
The storm is coming.
Yes, of course. And they're a member of NATO.
And even worse, they're a member of NATO. So I look at Iran as a problem we absolutely have to finish, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Gaza, same thing, and the Hezbollah. Why? Why am I fixated on this now? Because we have to be prepared for the next war, which will be probably against Turkey and Egypt. So
Let's hope not.
I hope not also, but hope, you remember, it was the last demon out of Pandora's box, and there's a reason for that. So when it comes to the Iranians, I've been asked repeatedly, what do you want? What do you want in terms of an end game?
You want to bomb them into the Stone Age.
And the end game is, I want to make sure that when the guns fall silent and the IRGC is still in control in Tehran, I don't want them to have enough money to buy a single roll of toilet paper.
Okay,
which
sense.
means the energy generating centers, the oil and gas industry, the water distribution system, it's all finished.
You understand that it will not happen.
When people ask for my advice or my opinion, I give them what I see should be done.
Should be.
No, should be.
Should be.
Because if I have to kind of scale my thoughts according to what the Kirya, the Ramat Kal du jour comes up with, or the Rosh HaMemshala, then there's no point in talking to me or anybody else for that matter. We just look to Washington and ask them, what do you want us to do?
But that's exactly what's going on.
But that's why I was convinced that getting into politics might make some kind of difference, because more people would listen to me. Okay?
But there will be less people to listen to you while you're in the politics.
And you're correct. And this is what I came to realize, that when you have this thing called party discipline, you can't speak your mind.
And you have coalition discipline.
And you have party and then coalition discipline. So someone like me would die.
You would probably don't listen to neither one of them.
And I'd get thrown out.
Something like that.
I'd get thrown out.
Something
So
like that.
now it's much more liberating to be able to sit, as I am now, with an intelligent, patriotic man and discuss options, to discuss what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and perhaps come up with some solutions that I could never discuss if I were adhering to party or coalition discipline.
Of course not. Tell me something. I hear it all the time. We're losing America. In the opinion of the people, I mean. Two questions, please. How do you see us in the relationship with America? Let's say, for example, that the vice president will be president. That's one. And number two, what are we doing wrong? Why they hate us suddenly?
Okay. Let me start with the second one. First of all, there is such a thing as the oldest hatred. And do you know what a definition of anti-Semitism is? An anti-Semite, as my father told me, is someone who hates Jews more than is absolutely necessary. Okay? This hatred has been suppressed for a number of reasons. It was always there. Let's just deal with the West and America in particular. It was always there. But for various social reasons, it was not regarded as acceptable to either act on or express. Well, anti-Semitism is like pressure in the West, and it has to come out sometime and in some way. And October 7th, believe it or not, served as an opportunity for this to burst forth. We also had the phenomenon when you ask...
But
first,
not the other way around?
No. When you ask the first question about, what will happen in the next election, what's happening is that the Republican Party, I believe, is going to suffer the same radicalization that the Democratic Party suffered from. And this is because people like Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly and
J.D. Vance
and the rest of them are now these are hyper isolationists, and they're also Christian. There's a branch of Christianity on the right. It's a right-wing group that view, especially Roman Catholicism, as a dominating philosophy, a dominating religious philosophy that should and does crush any kind of opposition from either religious people or political people. So if you look to the future, and the future is the next election, I think we're
Which
going
is
to...
in like a year and a half, 2
Yeah,
years.
we're going to be, unless people like Marco Rubio...
Doesn't,
No, I'm just saying, unless
Yeah.
people like Marco Rubio get control of the party, which is not going to happen,
No.
then what we're looking at is a Republican ticket made up of people like J.D. Vance and worse.
Yes.
And on the right, we don't even have to discuss it. You can pick any one of them you want on the left, rather.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry, on the left.
understood.
Okay, so this is why you just put your finger on the reason why I don't want to say hysterical, but I'm very emphatic about emphasizing the need for military self-sufficiency and strategic independence. Look, there's another issue involved here, and that's Aliyah. Because as these authoritarian and sometimes totalitarian forces start coalescing in the West, and in Europe it's already happened with the Muslims and the progressives, this is the Red-Green Alliance, and it's happening in the United States now. What's going to happen to the Olim? What's going to happen to the people in France that have to leave, or Belgium, or the United States, or Canada? Yes, and when I talk to those people, which I have, when I went to France, for example, several years ago to promote Aliyah, they were saying, you're expecting us to go from the frying pan into the fire. And I looked at them and I said, what do you mean? And they said,
there's a war in here.
There are wars. You're not finishing the wars.
Bombs.
There are bombs constantly. Yeah. These people will come because they have no choice. I understand this. But they deserve better. We deserve better. This is why, I sound, people say, like a warmonger.
No,
I am not.
It's very normal.
But we have to eliminate our enemies, not defeat them, but eliminate them to the point where our country is left alone, and we can become a safe haven for the Olim coming in from Chutz La'aretz and from Galut. Okay,
Why did they come already? The folks in England, in France. Why are they?
Can I tell you something about my part of my family was German.
Okay.
They came from Cologne, and one survived. The
one who left.
The one who left. The smart one survived. The day after Hitler gained the 33, the chancellorship. The rest of them, who were very, very wealthy industrialists, felt that Hitler was a joke, a clown, and that the good Germans would finally push him out. And they waited too long. Now, when you talk about the European Jews, when you talk about modern European Jews, and you talk about North American Jews, or even Jews from Australia, for example, there's a glue holding them in place. And the glue is of two chemicals, and it works on the mind, these chemicals. The first is materialism.
No, but I think the richest ones already left.
Wait. We'll deal with that. One of the glues holding people in place is materialism. They're addicted to it. Okay. The second glue is this misperception or misconception that all of the laws guaranteeing civil rights and a Bill of Rights, right? All the constitutional guarantees of safety in these really mean something, and they don't. They just don't, because it depends on the society. It depends on the society to enforce these.
The Muslims don't care about the laws.
No, at all, except Sharia. But the problem with the rich Jews is, yes, if you look at the number of unoccupied apartments and homes, just here in Yerushalayim, who owns these? Rich Jews who come for the Chagim, and then they leave.
Half of the apartment building where I live in are empty, only in the summer.
Correct. And I think that law has to change. I mean, there has to be a law for occupancy, that you have to be in a house for a fixed period of time, a restricted period of time. So you're a rich American Jew, you buy an apartment or a house, you got to be here for 6 months or 7 months or 8 months. You, not some subletter, but you bought this place, you stay here. Because, we do have a housing problem.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a fact. So as far as the West is concerned, look, you know as well as I do that before Bnei Israel left Egypt, there was the night of darkness.
So you think we will have to wait till there will be Praot or something like that?
Yeah.
Pogrom?
I honestly believe, well, there are two ways of looking at it. One, Aliyah has been described as a process of push and pull. The push is there already. I mean, people know there's something wrong and that the world that they thought protected them is coming to an end.
The moment you need to go to school with armed security guards.
Why? To put your Mogen David away? To take your kippah off? Yeah, okay. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, there's the pull of Israel. And on two counts, we're failing. Number one, we're not showing these people that there's going to be a secure land of Israel to come to. We can't even beat Hamas. We're not allowed, let me put it that way, to beat Hamas or Hezbollah or the Houthis or Iran. Okay, so people look at that. And the other thing is, and I've written about this also, we are not preparing for the Aliyah that's coming. We are not
preparing for nothing.
Okay.
What are we preparing for?
We're preparing for the next election.
Yes, that's true.
That's all.
That's
The
true.
next election and the next round of bullshit coming out of the various politicians saying or describing what they've done. And I'm thinking, do they really think that we're this stupid to believe them? And yes, they do.
Yes, they do.
They actually
right.
do.
Yeah.
Okay. So the problem, I think, with the West, look, I have cousins in New Jersey that called me and said, good news, we're making Aliyah.
Ah, very nice.
So I said, Kol hakavod, this is mitzuan, this is wonderful.
Wonderful.
Can I help you find a place here in Israel? You know, I know some real estate agents. They said, no, we're going to Miami.
Ah.
So I said, so when you finally have to leave Miami after one election of a governor that's a Fabisina, an anti-Semite, and he makes Mamdani look like, you know, the chairman of the Zionist Organization of America, you're going to be Yordim and in coming to Israel? Yes, and this is, if you look, there's a thin stream of people like my uncle from Germany coming here. These are the smart ones. But there's a flood going down to places like Florida where they think it'll be safe.
Florida, it's like Eilat.
Florida is like Eilat. That's correct. And they don't know that Eilat got hit in this last war. Okay?
Yeah.
There's no place safe. From my standpoint, the only safe place for a Jew is right here in Eretz HaKodesh. Right here. Yes, we have wars. Yes, we have internal political problems, monumental problems. Yes, you know, we're getting overtaxed and, you know, everything. Fine, but there are our problems, and there are problems that we can solve.
Understood. Jonathan, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I hope to speak to you again on a better terms, that the situation will be better.
It'll only be worse. No, people ask me, I ask people, why is it that, you know, my wife, Rivka, for example, always gets massive numbers of hits whenever she does an interview. And I don't. I get, you know, relatively few amounts of hits. And I was told by a friend of mine, well, first of all, she's much better to look at. And I say, okay, I agree. Second of all, she's optimistic. And she really exudes happiness to be here in the land. And yes, she admits to problems, but there are always solutions, right? With me.
I'm not sure that there's a solution for everything.
Oh, yeah, there are. But with me, you know, I just tell people you're going to die and it's going to be a terrible death and there's nothing you can do about it. And he said, that's why you get 100 hits and she gets 10,000. So I'd like to leave this just on one important point. Einstein once defined insanity.
By doing the same things and expecting other results.
Bidyu. And so when people complain about the matzav, and I ask them, who did you vote for since the moment you could vote? And they tell me it's the same party that they've been voting over and over and over again. I said, does that not suggest maybe you should think about voting for somebody else or for another party? Chas v'shalom, rak bibi. You know, okay, fine, then don't complain.
Understood. You're right. Thank you very much, Jonathan.
My pleasure.
Have a good day.
You too.